Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Monique and welcome to Medora Budgets. I'd like to thank anybody who's liked or commented on any of my videos, and especially those that have chosen to subscribe to my channel. Truly started this as a way to hold myself accountable, but I understand, recognize, and appreciate the community as a whole. So if you are rocking with me, thank you. If you haven't made up your mind yet, sit with me for a spell. At the end of this video, if it's content you find valuable or enjoyable, please feel free to subscribe. It's myself and Sweets, married with a whole bunch of kids, trying to figure out our future, family, and finances, so the decisions we're making now won't negatively impact us in the future. Today is Tuesday, so you're probably watching my Transfer Tuesday video while I'm making this one. Your girl is working it out with that city credit card, but I am here today to talk through one of the sheets in particular, dealing with the Budget Moms workbook. You know, I do use the PDF format for this particular workbook, and one of the sheets that I was most excited about was the monthly budget category breakdown. So I'm gonna scooch in here a little bit and let's talk about it. So this form in particular was interesting to me because of all of the different things it captures, especially around the budget categories and how that information should lay out. Now, it's my understanding that I'm supposed to use, I'll just show you guys real briefly. I did add some hyperlinks in here. I'm supposed to use this, right? All of the different categories that I created, and I'm supposed to be using this to put the information in as far as setup for that monthly budget category breakdown. So these budget categories here will align with the ones that I've already created. But when I started to look at this and I realized, you know, I get paid bi-weekly. I've always done my budget bi-weekly. Very rarely have you ever seen me do a monthly budget on my particular channel. So this was going to be a challenge overall for me. I decided to go ahead and come on screen to show you guys how I worked through setting everything up for this budget so that I'm ready at the end of January to fill in all of the rest of the information, and then to talk through some of the things that I've come, like my aha moments with this. Now, I'm not telling you to set up your information the same way. What I do want to do is explain, though, as a bi-weekly paycheck receiver, explain how I come up with all of the different monthly amounts and see if that helps you guys along the way. So you'll see a series of this form copied over and over again as I'm layering on more information, and we'll just talk through what all of that looks like. So looking at this initially, just the word monthly right there is a problem. So monthly budget category breakdown. First, I had to figure out what my month is. I don't get paid on January 1, and February 1, and March 1. I get paid bi-weekly based on the schedule allotted or assigned by my company, the company that I work for. With that said, I had to figure out what January looks like for me. As I worked through my budget schedule, one of the things I've told you guys before is if I have a paycheck and it's going to float between 2 months. So a paycheck that when I get paid, the 2 weeks that it covers is going to fall in both January, for example, or February, or December and January. I figure out whether or not what month that check is going to be associated with by the amount of days that it falls into for each month. So, for example, got paid on December the 27th. That left 4 days in December, 10 days in January that it was going to cover, that check was going to cover. So it's considered a part of my January month. So my January check is going to be, for the month, 3 paychecks, and it's going to cover the dates 12/27 through 2/6. Okay, that was the first thing I had to do, figure out what my month was as a bi-weekly paycheck receiver. Next thing I had to figure out is these numbers here. My starting balance is going to be 0. This is the first time I'm filling out this sheet. I'm not going to work through any rollover at this point because it might be too difficult for me to figure all of that stuff out and where that rollover came from, and I just didn't want to deal with this. So I decided my starting balance was going to be 0. My earned income, because I am a salaried employee, that's easy for me to figure out because I get paid the same amount every paycheck. And since I determined how many paychecks were going to be covered in this particular month, it was easy for me to calculate that piece. Other income, my son does give me $50 every time he gets paid. He will get paid 3 times. We get paid on the same day. So he gets paid the same days that I do. So it'll be covering 3 months for that. He gives me about $50 every paycheck. That's going to be about $150 for him. Savings used. I don't know if I'm going to use any of my sinking fund money, but I do know for sure, because I work on a split bill method for mortgage and for auto, that my mortgage, I've already had that set aside. So I went ahead and documented that here. So when you look at the amounts here, this is how they flow out. So starting balance was $0. Earned income is $6,900. That's my paycheck, salary paycheck times 3. Now, if you are hourly paycheck receiver, I would say, I think I've seen a lot of content creators say, you know, they budget on the lower end as far as their inflow is concerned, how much money they'll be getting, and they budget on the higher end when it comes to expenses. With that said, you know, you would calculate what your standard amount of hours that you typically work. So if you didn't work any overtime, you know, what does your typical check look like? Maybe that would be a good average to work with as far as a paycheck amount for the hourly employees. So it was $6,900 for me there, $150 for the other income that my son will give me, $335 I had saved up to help with that January 1st mortgage that needed to be paid. So that gives me a total of $7,385. So that's how I worked through that first set. Then it moved to the budget categories, and that's what you see over here. How those break out. So I have 13 categories. I listed them here, and I highlighted them in the same colors that I associated with them with over on my budget category page that you see here. So that's all the same, and it's kind of coordinated. Okay. All right. So that's what I did here. I made sure that I had all of those documented out. All right. That was the next step. Step number 4, maybe, is then what do I need to understand as far as those dates are concerned? So remember, my dates that I'm going to cover for the month of January are going to cover from 12/27 through 2/6. And what I realize is there's a 1st in here. January 1st and February 1st are included in here. January 2nd and February 2nd. That got me to thinking, you know, are there some bills that I'm going to end up paying twice in this January time frame because of how I calculate my month? And it turns out that was the case. So I'm going to pay my mortgage twice in that time period. I'm going to pay my home warranty and my protection plan twice in that time period. I'm going to pay electricity twice in that time period. I'm going to pay for subscriptions. I'm going to pay my Fubo twice and my Spotify twice in that time period. So that was the next thing I needed to work out. That's why I have some space in between my budget categories, and I didn't list them all right on top of each other because I needed to make sure I have some space to write some extra notes, because I might need that just to document some additional things I need to consider when I'm working through what my monthly budget breakdown is going to look like. Likewise, that $335 that I saved up, so whatever I come up with as far as that monthly budget amount is concerned for that category, I need to, up here where it says monthly budget, so I need to make sure that I account for the fact that I have that $335 extra saved up here. So I need to add that into my budget because that is an expense that I know is going to come out of this home amount. I have it saved to the side, but it is for this home category. So I need to make sure I add it in here. All right. So that was the next thing that I worked through. Go through, look at the dates. 12/20 that your month calculates. That's my month is 12/27 to 2/6. Your dates might look different based on how you calculate yours, and then see, are there any bills that you're going to actually have to pay more than once in that time frame? You just need to go ahead and check and make sure of that and document that on this form to make sure that you don't forget. The next step was figuring out what the monthly budget is going to be for each of these categories. And what I realized is it's not going to be cookie cutter for me. There are some things I calculate based on how I cover the cost by the month. There are some things that I calculate based on how I cover the cost by paycheck. And I had to realize that it's not going to be the same going all the way down the list. So it's gonna look different. Every one of these categories is not calculated the same way when I do my paycheck budget, and I need to account for that in these numbers that I come up with. So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more here. I gave an example. So this is what started me. I realized, you know, on average, I give about $395 per paycheck towards the items that are listed in my home category. But for property care, the things that are listed there, I think about those from a monthly standpoint, because all of the bills that are listed there, or all of the items that are listed under that category, I pay once a month. Whereas for the home, all of those items are not calculated by the month. I pay them by the paycheck. So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more, and then let me show you what that looks like. So a long time ago, I did my budget categories, right? And you guys remember that, and I had it all color coordinated and all that good stuff. And once I documented what the category would be and all of the items that were listed under the category, I thought my job was, and color coordinated it, I thought my job was done, but that really was just the start. As I'm working through this monthly budget breakdown, I'm saying to myself, how do I figure out what that number should be? And I recognized a few things about how I handle my bills. So some of these categories, I treat them based on the paycheck. Some I treat based on the month. So let's look at home first. So for home, I put aside $335 for the mortgage. I put aside $60 for supplies to spend. Both of these are automatic spends. That totals up to $395 every paycheck I expect to spend for mortgage and for supplies. Now, as I was working through this category, I said to myself, well, I give $150 for buffer. So should I write that down here as well as spend? And I realized the answer to that was no. I don't expect to spend $150 from the buffer sinking fund. I expect to save $150 in the buffer sinking fund, so that it's there whenever I need to spend it. So I did not write that $150 there. What I realized is I needed to have a category specific for savings, and it needed to include investment, Roth IRA, emergency fund, challenges, but also sinking funds. So anytime you see on my paycheck budget where I am contributing money to a sinking fund, that sinking fund money is considered or a part of the savings category, because I'm putting it aside in the event that I need it. Versus, as you see here for food, I want to spend no more than $220 per paycheck for groceries. I want to spend no more than $60 for dining in a paycheck cycle. So I had to go through each category and think about it. Number one, whether or not I wanted to calculate my numbers based on paycheck or based on a monthly amount, or whether or not it really should be more so considered savings versus an expense. And I had to do that work myself. So this is where the brunt of the work happened for me for this particular form that I'm filling out as far as this monthly budget breakdown. Right off the rip, anything dealing with a utility bill, anything dealing with a debt, and anything dealing with property care are all considered monthly expenses, period. So let me stop moving the screen. So home, I consider by paycheck. The numbers that you see are based on how much I expect to spend per paycheck. Utilities is a monthly one. Debt, all the debt amounts are monthly. I have $50 that I put aside to cover supplements and over-the-counter medicines, etc. I do that $50 every paycheck period. So that's how I documented that one there. We just talked about property care. That's property insurance. I pay $175 a month. Protection plan is $10 a month. Home warranty is $50 a month. So that one is considered a monthly expense for all of the items that are listed here. My loan, I do a split bill for that. For auto, my loan is a split bill. It's $255 every paycheck, and I allot myself $80 to spend on gas every paycheck. So I decided this was going to be a paycheck category. Personal, I give myself $80 every paycheck, so that's a paycheck category. food, I give myself $2.20 every paycheck for groceries, $60 every paycheck for dining. So that's a paycheck category. Family, I give Corinne $40 automatically out the door to her for allowance every paycheck. And I added an extra $10 in here just in case I needed a little bit of buffer and she needed a little bit more money, but that is a per paycheck amount. Now, you know, I'm saving up money specifically for June for the vacation, but remember that's going to be a sinking fund. So that amount is going to be reflected under savings. Okay. Pets. For Xerxes, for his food and items and supplies, I typically spend around $20. I did add an extra $5 there. So now it's $25 per paycheck, but I give towards that every paycheck period. I don't automatically have money that I contribute towards concerts or movies, etc. So I had to come up with an amount for that one, and I decided to make that amount monthly just because I don't have anything set that I automatically expect to spend in any of these categories. So rec and entertainment is $50 a month, and then I've talked through my paycheck, all challenges, any money I give to emergencies, any money for sinking funds, any money for investments, all of that will be considered under savings. I did have one more, it looks like, monthly category, and that was subscriptions or streaming services, because you tend to pay those once a month, right? So I have those listed here. Any yearly plans, I calculate that and see how that comes up as far as a monthly amount is concerned. My electronic insurances that I have on my iPads and phones and stuff, I included them all in subscriptions as well. And that averaged out to about $205 a month. So that's another one for a month. And then miscellaneous is just transfers. Okay. So that's how I went through, again, my budget categories. And then I took all of these amounts that I wrote in, whether it was by a paycheck category or a monthly category. I took all of that and I wrote it out in here. So that is what you see here. If it was a monthly amount, I put it in there. If it was by a paycheck amount, I put it in there for that category. Now that I've done that once, I will not have to do that again, but I will review them at the beginning of every month before I set up for the next one. So when I get ready to set up for February, I will review those. I already know one is going to change because my home mortgage is going to go up. So I know for February that number will look different. So I will review these, and that would just be something I would tell you guys to do. You set these up. Once you set it up, you should be good, but always review it at the beginning of the month to see if anything has changed. Sometimes you end up paying more around electric during the summer months. So maybe you adjust that utility category, whatever category you have that utilities is listed under. As I mentioned before, I'm going to have to start doing some lawn care at some point. So as my lawn care comes back into play, the property care amount will go up that I expect to see. It will go higher. It will be higher than $250, which probably means that my savings is going to go down because I got to account for that money somewhere. So once a month, I will do a review of this information. So I did take all of this. So now that I have what my monthly budget is, it's going to be $395 per check, trying to figure out for my monthly, $250 a month here, etc. Now I had to come up with what the actual number was. And that's what you see here. So I determined $395 per check. Let's see. Let's come down a little bit. All right. So I determined $395 per check needs to go towards home expenses. So, and I've already said that I expect to get paid 3 times. Okay. So $395 times 3 equals $1,185. And then you add the $335 equals $1,520. So that one is going to show $1,520 as far as the budget is concerned. And that will cover my mortgage for 2 months within that number. Okay. Property care is $250 a month, period. I don't have to calculate anything. Utility, $500 a month, period. Don't have to calculate anything. So these monthly amounts, don't have to do anything else with them. Medical, I give myself $50 every paycheck for over-the-counter medicines. So 50 times 3 equals $150, and so on and so forth. So I worked through all of those numbers, and then I added them all together, and my total at the end is $7,151. So my expected total inflow is $7,385, and my expected expenses is $7,151. And that is how I worked through setting up the monthly budget breakdown form. So I don't know if this was helpful for anybody, just sharing with you guys what I needed to do. If you have some other ideas about different ways that you can calculate this a little differently, especially if you get paid bi-weekly, please feel free to leave that in the comments or shoot me a note. Happy to look at what you're doing to see if it would work better for me. I've done a lot of work trying to figure out these categories in the best way that made sense to me. And the biggest thing was I was trying to make them all a monthly amount, and it just didn't work. A lot of these, for me, I pay or I think about them based on a paycheck cycle. So I thought to myself, why not just do it from a paycheck cycle and then just do the numbers to see what it calculates out as a monthly expense. Okay, that is it for me. Thanks everybody for your time. You guys have a good one.